Hi everyone, it's another Bench to Bedside day, and today I'll be talking about the heart. I started Bench to Bedside to get into talking a lot about science, or talking a bit more about science, and I guess that involves, I have to do the honors of talking about my favorite organ and telling the world why the heart is so important. So in this video I'll be going into cardiovascular research, why it's important, what I do in it, and the futures of cardiovascular science. I have been looking at the heart since like 13 years old. So the first time you learn circulation, maybe I'm lying, maybe it wasn't 13, but anyway, took GCSE exams and the heart was involved. So I can say I've been learning about the heart since at least GCSE, and all my other academic decisions were kind of molded by the heart and just determined by, okay, the heart is there, I'm gonna learn about it. And the heart for me was just this really beautiful, simple organ. It was just really cool. Like literally learning circulation was one of the coolest things to me. Just learning about how something so simple in my eyes just told you an amazing picture about health and disease, and it was also a bit complicated in its own way, but at its core it was simple, because your heart is what pumps blood to the rest of your body, is what provides oxygen to your organs, and your heart is integral to function. So those are like the thousands of reasons I fell in love with the heart. And as I grew within research, you begin to learn that cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of humans worldwide. The WHO estimates that 30 or 31% of deaths worldwide are due to cardiovascular complications or due to heart disease. And with that being said, it is this wide area of research that covers so many things. So people study the heart on like a molecular level, where they're trying to understand how the heart functions, what little things do in the heart, and then people then go on to study how the heart functions as a whole organ. And then specifically where I'm like in is imaging. So looking at the heart, looking at pictures of the heart, and seeing how you can use imaging to guide new treatments, to guide diagnosis of heart disease, and to the one thing that isn't talked about a lot, like maintenance or upkeep of a disease, if that's how you say it, or just monitor progression of a disease, for lack of a better word. So in the imaging world, you take pictures of the heart essentially, and with pictures and the imaging world, there are different quality pictures, or as with any camera, there are different quality cameras. You use a certain camera for different things, and you might use different lenses for different things as well. I'm no photographer, I'm just trying to make a really good analogy, and I hope it worked. But yeah, within imaging, you're just trying to take a good picture of the heart to give you a good sense of function. And when you take a picture of a heart, or when you take a picture of a normal heart, you would get this sense of it's doing well, it's beating properly, it's contracting, so moving in and out properly, blood is flowing through the heart properly, and there's nothing stopping it. But once you like bring in disease states of the heart, with disease states of the heart, you now get changes in structure of the heart. Some diseases might not cause like changes in structure immediately of the heart, so imaging is a very good tool that you can use to monitor the progression of change. So at the beginning of someone's disease, you might not notice much, and then as they progress and as they get worse, that is when you would physically see them, or like visually see them. And if with imaging you can kind of pinpoint time points that are best to kind of intervene with treatment, you can pinpoint time points that are best to like look at this patient just a little bit more. So yeah, people get their hearts imaged for so many reasons, and this includes, you can present with chest pain, you can have breathlessness, and as I was talking about monitoring the progression of diseases, people get their hearts imaged. People get their hearts imaged to monitor the progression of a disease. So within cancer patients, they will get their hearts scanned quite regularly, just to monitor how the treatments are taking effect and making sure there are no great changes with the treatment that they're taking. And with that being said, I did a whole master's in medical imaging, or medical ultrasound specifically, so it'll kind of be like me doing the world a disservice if I don't talk about it. So my master's was in medical ultrasound, specifically echocardiography. And in echo, that's when your voice echoes. It's like you hear it twice. So an echo sends electrical impulses and then receives the electrical impulse back, and from that, in very simple terms, you make an image. So with my research, I looked at hypertensive patients, and hypertension is a disease caused due to high blood pressure. And I specifically looked at pulmonary hypertension, and that is looking at patients with high blood pressure, but in relation to like their lungs and like vessels that supply the lungs and stuff like that. And then looking further, instead of looking at the left side of your heart, so quick anatomy lesson, your left side of the heart is what pumps blood to the rest of the body, while your right side of the heart is what pumps blood to the lungs. So any like pressure changes within that region would affect. I was looking at pressure changes that specifically affected the right side of your heart. And the right side of your heart is a bit understudied, such as trying to figure out how you can use science, or how you can use this imaging technique and the new measurements I was making to predict the outcomes of patients. And when I say outcomes, I mean, will the patient be hospitalized? Will the patient get better? And does this, at what point does like the measurements we take give a picture that isn't good? So will this now lead to death? When have we got to the point of like technically no return, or when more treatment is needed, or when you should really be paying attention? And that's what I was looking at, and it was quite interesting comparing what I did to like things that are used routinely and things that are used in clinics. So that is what imaging science does. It's this beautiful thing that is used to kind of add to what is currently being used, but also monitor different states of diseases and bring in new technologies that can add to how we look at the heart. So within ultrasound, you now have 3D ultrasounds, you have 4D ultrasounds, which is really, really cool. So without gushing too much about ultrasound, I'll talk a little bit more about different imaging modalities and what they're used for. So you have MRIs. And MRIs are kind of like the cool kid. They are the one everyone wants to be using. They produce like these really, really crisp, beautiful images. And specifically when you're measuring volumes of the heart, people really like to use MRI for that. And MRIs can also be used with patients that have had heart attacks, to look at the area that isn't moving anymore. Because when you have a heart attack is basically stopping blood flow to a region of the heart, and that can cause cell death, so death within the cells that didn't have oxygen because they were deprived. Think of it, you don't have food. So that's what happens in terms of heart attacks, and MRIs are really good for monitoring that and just looking at it. You also have SPECT and CT scans, which are really cool, and there are like so many things you can do with them. So SPECT what is it with SPECT? SPECT is the one I know the least about. So it's without going into like every single imaging thing, because there are loads and the science is like really cool. And also imaging is like this really weird field where you look at like biology as well. You need to understand the biology, but there's also a bit of physics involved, which is beyond me that I'm in this. There's a bit of physics involved as well. And finally, with imaging, there's this like cool new way it's going into, which is AI and the use. AI is also really, really cool because within imaging, you produce loads and loads of data, and if you can automate these processes, as said before, it'll be really cool. And also grouping different disease states, you could probably get information that would have otherwise been really hard to understand. But yeah, so imaging science within the cardiovascular field involves identifying patients to look at because of presentations at clinic, genetic reasons. Imaging is also used to monitor the progression of a disease. Imaging can be used to inform the right time to give treatment, or the most appropriate time. And imaging is used to monitor changes due to drugs that may be in development to make sure that they do not have an effect on the heart and they do not cause physical changes. So it's a really cool field. In this video, I hope I've convinced you that the heart is really, really cool and everybody should know about it. Aside from that, yeah, see you in the next video, whenever that is. Bye!